Hello there. My post post or video today is going to be about the first chapter, which we just read, and on page 7, I'm sort of going off of one quote in particular, and then I'm going to go from there and connect it to other things that I've worked with in my life or in past classes, and connect it back. So on page 7 says, "This rather bizarre drama exemplifies some familiar attitudes toward the nature of the mind, body, and movement. Like the doctors in the television movie, many cultural observers and researchers ignore the body and its actions, seeing them as irrelevant trappings for the mind. They scarcely notice the body, seldom comment on movement, and thus often miss the role or significance of either in human events. Such omissions are common in accounts of cultural history and anthropology." Interesting, as an anthropologist is writing this, and I think saying sort of this is what I have to bring into the conversation about even anthropology in general. I would disagree with that. I think this author is wrong about that. I think she's missing sort of a whole literature of and type of anthropology, medical anthropology, which criticizes and looks critically at biomedicine and sort of the Western way of looking at health, which atomizes, is a term that is often used in medical anthropology, atomizes the human being into different parts. And so it's like the mind is one part of the body and then, or of the self, and then there's the body, but even in the body, then there's these different parts. So in medical anthropology, it's much more looking at, and I would say even here, I would sort of critique her the way she talks about it, as it's like the body is the whole thing, rather than the self being the whole thing, which I think most anthropologists, or most medical anthropologists, would argue. I'd be curious what some other of you think about this, as there are 4 of us in this class who all took medicine, healing, and culture last semester, which is a medical anthropology class. But so I'd say like one of the key theories that medical anthropology is based in is this idea that the body is not atomized, and that the self is one whole, and medical anthropology looks critically at the way the Western view of atomizing the self, kind of like the negative outcomes of that. And so there's a deep conversation about mind-body connection, mind-body-soul connection, and not even just connection, that they are intrinsically one and the same. So I think even to say, like, the mind is a part of the body still even sort of feels weird, because it's not so much that it's a part of, they're all one thing, I think a medical anthropologist would argue. And that with health, it's hard to know, like, which came first, like the chicken or the egg kind of thing, of like, this event happened and then you started feeling sad and then you started getting headaches, or did you get headaches and you started feeling sad, right? So it's all sort of interconnected, it's all one unit that works together, that we as a whole being respond to with different health responses. And I think that can connect to movement. That's not specifically talked about as much in medical anthropology, because it's not specifically looking at movement, but I think that's deeply tied into it, because if it's talking about health, it's talking about the self, it's talking about the different parts of the self. Part of that is muscle, right? And so if I've been through a traumatic event, I have a fight or flight response in me a lot of the time, maybe all of the time, in which case my muscles may be tense all of the time, which is going to affect my health and my pain and affect my sense of well-being, but it's also going to affect my movement. It's going to affect how I move. It's going to affect how, when I'm trying to fall in class, how willing I'm able to let myself do that. I think in general, right, it's something we're afraid of, but I'd imagine if I'm someone who's been through that and I'm constantly holding myself tight, I'm going to be an even harder time going, okay, yeah, I can relax and I can roll into this, because you're constantly on alert. Um, so I think that does tie into movement in a way that perhaps medical anthropologists don't articulate often because it is a little bit beyond what they're looking at. Um, but I would disagree with Cynthia Novak that there is no that's not in anthropology, because I think there absolutely is. There's an extensive conversation about um, the a critique of um, Descartes' Cartesian dualism. Um, so yeah, so I protest that. I disagree. Um, but the general idea I agree with. Some other thoughts that I had, just wanted to connect it to. Really briefly, I'll talk about a really interesting piece we read in Medicine, Healing, and Culture, where we talked about. There was an article about this one person in particular, Diane Redden, which is a pseudonym, who has chronic health issues, and it just is really interesting how they track what her experience is like, and what sort of the author suggests, and I think even she suggested at a certain point, is like some of the symptoms she have actually came from social relationships, and so something that stood out to me in particular was after learning through her relationship with her mother, who didn't really respond to them when there was emotional, like, I'm feeling upset kind of things. Her mom would be like, nah, whatever, you'll get over it. But when it would be like, I have a stomach ache, her mom would be like, oh, okay, we're going to take care of this. Or if it was like, we're going to, or like if something severe, there's some sort of severe physical health issue, then the mom would address it. But if it was something like a mental health issue, it wasn't just as much. As a whole nother conversation we can get about in terms of the dualism between mind and body. And in this, she's saying that we prioritize, that we ignore the body, which I think is true in a lot of ways, right? It's sort of like our body is a container to get our head and our brain to different places. Our body is a container to put our brain onto a piece of paper or onto a computer. But I think also in terms of looking at health when it is like an illness, we sort of look at it backwards. I haven't quite figured out the connection with this, but with mental health and physical health, that for the most part, in most cultures, physical health is prioritized and looked at and actually sort of taken seriously, whereas mental health is often taken less seriously, which is interesting in contrast when it's like we prioritize the mind so much in other ways. That was a really big tangent. I don't know where I was going with that before that. Pain is performance. So her mom prioritized physical health issues. So Diane, over time, what the article was actually arguing is that she actually developed physical health issues in response to that. That she not consciously wasn't like, I'm going to have a stomach ache now, or I'm going to pretend I have a stomach ache now. She actually would just start having stomach aches because that was how she realized she could communicate. That was the way that people would listen to her. That was the way she would get the things she was needing, because when she would say them, it didn't matter. And so she learned over time, subconsciously, like it wasn't a conscious decision, I'm going to have a stomach ache now, that she would have when bad things would happen in her life, or she wasn't getting what she needed in a social context, her body would physically react so that she would be able to get what she needs. So that she later talks about at work, she was in a work environment that was really not good for her, and she kept getting sick. And so when she would try to communicate before that, of like, I'm needing this thing, or I'm needing this thing, I need to take a break, whatever, that wasn't so much respected. But when she'd have a stomach ache, then she was able to go. So that was a mind-blowing article for me and totally changed. It's good. It was a good thing. So that's just sort of, I think, another piece in sort of this whole being responding to things. So how our bodies, the physical parts of us respond, but our mind's physical too. But whatever. We have limited language. Our body, our body communicates and engages in a conversation as well.